Once upon a time, we look around the packed sanctuary during the high holidays, and we'd see new suits and dresses, a sprinkling of fur stoles. Now you're talking, of course, 70s, 60s, and 70s. And some extravagantly elaborate and awesome hats. Hats so wonderful that they evoked Twitters before there was a Twitter. Now we wear these masks. Oi. As we have all learned, masks have many important functions. In its current and most ubiquitous use, a mask is an essential part of our COVID-19 PPE, the personal protective equipment. There are also masks to project a message or a character. Naturally, entrepreneurs have developed PPE masks that both protect and project. Some have simple logos. I just got this one from the ADL. And some of you I saw had Bronco masks and some with colorful lips on them, whatever. They have elaborate designs, and some, as I mentioned, have the declaration of your allegiance to your favorite sports team. And don't worry, Bronco fans, it's going to be okay. Well before COVID, we were accustomed to wearing different kind of masks in sports. Baseball catchers wore a mask, as do modern football players, and you know it's a penalty to tug on it. Hockey goalies wear masks, and they can be rather freaky if worn by someone named Jason. Of course, the masks we usually associate with fear are the Halloween masks. The masks worn by us during Purim are not usually scary, even the ones that look like he that shall not be named, Haman. Ooh. Actually, there is an association of Purim with Yom Kippur, including masks. Kabbalistic commentators noted that the Torah calls the Day of Atonement Yom Kippurim, a day like Purim. Now, how did they come up with that? Well, the letter Kaf serves as a prefix, a shortened form of the Hebrew word kamo, which indicates a metaphor, like or as. Therefore, they taught that Yom Kippurim is a Day of Atonement, is a day Kippurim, or like Purim. Other commentators noted wryly that just as Esther hid her true identity to protect herself, we dress up in costumes on Purim. And on Yom Kippur, we also put on appearances, not just the big awesome hats, but also displays of piety that even the prophet Isaiah castigated, as we just heard in the Haftarah reading. Furthermore, in the book of Esther, God is hidden, never mentioned by name. Neither does the book mention the land of Israel or the temple in Jerusalem. In the temple, in the Talmud, there is a teaching that claims that Esther is in the Torah, that Esther is mentioned in the Torah. Now that's a rather surprising claim. Now, how could Esther and Mordecai and the Purim gang, whose adventures took place nearly 1,000 years after the Torah was written, how could they be mentioned in the Torah? Well, the sages of the Gemara add the same question. They asked, from where in the Torah is Esther? And the response refers to a passage we just read the week before last, where it is written, Va'anochi haster astir panai beyom hachu. It says, and I will surely hide. Astir. Astir means I will hide. Sounds like Esther, the hiding queen. Esther's name is linked to hiding as she concealed her Jewish identity under royal garments. Likewise, the name Esther is an adopted foreign name that she used in public instead of her Hebrew name, which is Hadassah, right? Even the opposite actions of feasting and fasting link Purim to Yom Kippur. Esther arranged for a feast to win the favor of King Ahasuerus, while we fast on Yom Kippur to demonstrate to God, Avinu Malkeinu, our sincerity. And it should be pointed out that just before Purim is the fast of Esther, and at the conclusion of Yom Kippur is a break feast, or a breaking of the fast. Fasts, too, are open displays of piety that are not always of the noblest intent. The prophet Isaiah, as we just read, scolded our ancestors against the vain belief that mere external displays of piety, that those are not what is wanted. Again, as we just read, is such the fast I desire, a day for people to starve their bodies? Is it bowing the head like a bulrush and lying in sackcloth and ashes? Do you call that a fast? A day when Adonai is favorable? So what Isaiah did is he wanted us to approach God not with our faces, not with external displays. Rather, he urged us to make our offerings from the depth of our being, from our heart. Our offering should come from that which is in, the avodah shebalev, the offering of the heart and soul, not from the face. Because we have one heart, but we have many faces. As Rabbi Jeremy Rosen pointed out, the biblical Hebrew has no word for face. Rather, it has panim, which means faces. There's no singular for face. Rather, panim, many different faces. In English, to be two-faced is an insult. In Hebrew, it is a reflection of the complex and ever-changing nature of our responses to the world about us. Our changing faces reflect different relationships, situations, and moods. These faces are not false masks. Well, at least they do not have to be. It's natural for one's face to light up in joy when you see a loved one or a dear friend that you haven't been with for a while. And it's to be expected that our face will display a scowl when we hear bad news or bite into something bitter or smell something foul. And every one of those faces that we have is true. The smile and the scowl, the interested and the bored, the focused and the distracted, the compassionate and the harsh, the sweet and the cynical, they are all ours. Faces, not masks. Faces with their varied moods. Faces that express truth and depth and complexity far beyond the capacity of mere words. As eyes are windows to the soul, so too faces are reflections of our heart. The challenge before us, then, is not which face we choose to show the world. Rather, the challenge is transforming that which is in our heart and our souls so that the best that is within shines forth. We've had many unique experiences during this COVID pandemic, but one clearly stands out, and that is that we can see faces changing on the screen. Our very countenances show up in Zoom. Some are constantly fluffing their hair. Some are shifting the angle of their look, trying to remember which was my good side. Some are totally unself-conscious about their look, yawning broadly on the screen, rolling their eyes, dropping their jaws in disbelief, or burying their heads in their hands to indicate either that they're very tired or very bored or a little of both. Some try to toy with their look with computer-generated backgrounds. All this reveals both self-consciousness and self-awareness. At a recent Lunch and Learn class, we had an interesting discussion about the difference between self-conscious and being self-aware. As was described some time ago in Scientific American, it said, consciousness is awareness of one's body and one's environment. Self-awareness is recognition of that consciousness, not only understanding that one exists, but further understanding that one is aware of one's existence, the thinking about the thinking. Another way of putting it, to be conscious is to think, to be self-aware is to realize that you're thinking about your thoughts, to which we should add self-consciousness is hyper-awareness of oneself, one's appearance, or one's actions. Moses was both self-conscious and self-aware when he covered his face to avoid frightening his people. He was afraid because when he came down from Mount Sinai, his face was all aglow. The Torah said that he wore a mask or a veil, in which in Hebrew is called a masveh. His encounter with God on Mount Sinai caused his face to shine in a very unusual way. Michelangelo, you might be aware, Michelangelo famously sculpted a depiction of Moses with horns of light that led to generations of Gentiles thinking that jutting from our Jewish heads are actual horns. But I've checked, no horns, just light. So what did Moses have to mask? Why did Moses have to mask his face? Perhaps it was so that the people would not look upon him as if he were God. The Torah relates that Moses would take off the veil to reveal his glowing face only when he shared God's words. Otherwise, he shielded his face. Masks pop up throughout our Jewish traditions. Adam and Eve tried to hide from God, but that did not work. Covering up with fig leaves apparently do not do the trick. Rebecca covered herself with a veil as a sign of modesty. Leah disguised herself to look like her sister and steal her honeymoon away from Rachel. Tamar veiled herself to look like a prostitute and to trick and shame her father-in-law into an illicit tryst. Perhaps you didn't know that the Torah had such racy drama. Well, it does. So check it out and tell the kids that there are parts that are inappropriate for them, parts of the Torah that we need to hide from them. Because if they hear that we're trying to hide certain parts of the Torah, what are they going to do? They're going to go right away and try to read it. Hiding, concealing, deceptions that are revealing, faces we show, feelings we suppress, clothes we wear to influence and impress. Our masks are many, our face is ever changing, but what is in our heart and souls, that too needs a telling. I began by sharing how there is surprising but meaningful link between Yom Kippur and Purim. That connection is so strong that it is taught that when the Messianic age comes and blesses all humanity with eternal peace and harmony, that all the other festivals and holy days will be abolished, except Purim and Yom Kippur. Yes, that's right. The two most starkly different sacred days twinned for eternity. Purim and Yom Kippur, 2 days of feasts and fasts, hiding behind masks, dressing up to shine or obscure hidden agendas and confessions of the soul, one with raucous revelry, the other with soulful solemnity, one with grinding groggers and laughter, while the other plaintively pounding the chest and crying, Al chet shechatanu, for the sins we have sinned. One with headaches from too much imbibing, the other from caffeine withdrawal and starving. And yet beyond the contrasts beneath the masks, there is much in common. The renowned Torah scholar Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik maintained that the most significant feature common to both Purim and Yom Kippur is a call for divine compassion and intercession, a mood of petition arising out of great distress. The modern Purim frivolities we enjoy mask the real fear experienced long ago by the Jews of Shushan and Persia. They feared for their lives. Yom Kippur is also a day of Norah v'Ayom, an awesome day of dread on which we plead for divine compassion and intercession. This Yom Kippur, more than ever before, we express prayers and pleas with hearts distressed from the ravages of this plague. Though masks obscure our mouths and noses, sadness can still be seen in the eyes. This vulnerability we feel, it's real. We are mortal, and we're afraid. Our world seems to be evolving too fast for us to keep up. Postures of confidence are not able to mask the gnawing feeling of imposter syndrome. How can we keep up a brave face when we honestly have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow? And yet, hope can also be seen beneath these masks, because we have learned new skills during this pandemic. We have learned to look beneath the surface. We have found a revitalizing spirit of ingenuity and creativity that can help us transcend isolation and frustration. We have rediscovered the life-affirming role of loved ones and community, because they are a sacred source of purpose and meaning. The lessons learned will strengthen us and help us to persevere through every future challenge and setback. After nearly 7 months of hiding behind masks and looking at faces reduced to flat, two-dimensional images on a screen, the day will come again when we are able to be with one another. And when we do, we'll be enlightened by our experiences with masks and faces. We'll be more mindful of false assumptions and appearances. We will know that apparent opposites, even Purim and Yom Kippur, and dare I say, Democrats and Republicans, have more in common than that which superficial stereotypes define. I'm going to let that sink in for a little bit. We will know to look beyond the face and acknowledge the heart of the ones we are with. Let us look forward to that day when our masks are off and we see each other not for the face we show, but for the compassionate heart of emotion and the longing for love and the meaning that radiates from every soul, if only we let it shine. Ken Yeh Ratzon. May it be God's will, and may it happen soon in our days.